The room was stiflingly quiet, the kind of silence that wraps around you, heavy and unsettling. I leaned back against the wall, my laptop perched precariously on my knees as I finished up my assignment. It was past 2 a.m., and exhaustion was clawing at the edges of my focus. Finally, I muttered, clicking save and shutting the laptop with a definitive snap. The dim light of the screen extinguished, plunging my single college dorm room into near-total darkness. My phone screen lit up briefly as I glanced at it. A missed call from Daniel. Of course. The ex-boyfriend I had been actively avoiding for months. It was time-stamped an hour earlier. Not tonight, Daniel. I whispered under my breath, locking the phone and letting it slip from my fingers onto the bed. The night felt oppressive, as if the air itself carried a weight that pressed against my chest. I turned off the bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness. Sleep took over quickly, a relief I hadn't realized I was yearning for. But it didn't last. I awoke to murmurs. Low, guttural whispers filled the room, their origin elusive and disconcerting. My heart thudded against my ribcage as my eyes snapped open. I couldn't see much in the gloom, but there was something wrong, something off. Then I saw it, the faint glow of my phone screen cutting through the darkness. It wasn't just lit up. A call was active. The screen showed Daniel's name, and the timer ticked past 30 minutes. Panic gripped me like a vice. My body refused to move, as if invisible chains held me down. I wanted to scream, to fling the phone away, to do anything that would break the spell. But nothing came out. My mouth opened, yet no sound escaped, just a choking silence that mocked my helplessness. Why is this happening again? The thought clawed its way through the haze of fear. This wasn't the first time. The memory of a similar incident, months ago, flashed in my mind. A night that felt eerily similar, a call that shouldn't have been answered, a voice that didn't belong. Finally, with a shuddering gasp, my body responded. My fingers trembled as I managed to lift the phone to my ear. My voice cracked as I forced out, "Daniel?" There was no answer. Just silence on the other end. Then, faintly, a chuckle. A low, humorless laugh that sent a chill spiraling down my spine. "We'll talk tomorrow," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this now." The reply came sharp and clear. "Like I'll be there by tomorrow." The call disconnected abruptly. The screen went dark, taking the faint glow with it. For a moment, I just stared at the phone, my hand shaking uncontrollably. The words echoed in my mind, laced with a sinister finality I couldn't ignore. Tomorrow felt impossibly far away. Morning came reluctantly, the gray light of dawn filtering weakly through the thin curtains. I hadn't slept after the call. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the old dormitory walls set my nerves alight. My phone remained on the bedside table, untouched since I had dropped it there hours ago. The words still echoed in my mind. Like I'll be there by tomorrow. What had Daniel meant? Or was it even Daniel? The thought made me shudder. When I finally mustered the courage to check my phone, my hands trembled. I opened the call log. Nothing. No missed calls, no active calls, not even the call at 1 a.m. I stared at the blank screen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Was I losing my mind? I dialed Daniel's number. The ringing felt like an eternity, each tone slicing through the fragile quiet of the morning. Finally, he answered, his voice groggy. "What? Daniel, did you call me last night?" My voice cracked, the words tumbling out in a rush. "What are you talking about? No, I didn't call you. Not even at 1 in the morning? Or later?" I pressed, my grip tightening on the phone. I said no. "Why would I call you?" he snapped, irritation creeping into his tone. "We haven't talked in months." I swallowed hard, the icy tendrils of fear coiling tighter around my chest. "Never mind," I muttered and hung up, not waiting for his response. The conversation had offered no comfort, only more questions. The day passed in a fog. I attended my classes, took notes, nodded at the appropriate moments, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying the call, dissecting every word, every sound. The chuckle, the voice, it had sounded like Daniel, but twisted somehow, darker. By the time I returned to my dorm, the winter sun was already sinking below the horizon. The long shadows in the hallway seemed to stretch unnaturally, pooling like ink in the corners. I fumbled with my keys, the cold metal slipping from my fingers before I managed to unlock the door. The room felt different. The air was heavier, and the faint scent of something metallic lingered. My heart raced as I scanned the room. Everything was where I had left it, but the atmosphere, it was wrong. I shook my head, forcing myself to breathe deeply. "Get it together," I whispered. "It's just your imagination." But the feeling didn't go away. As the hours ticked by, the oppressive weight in the room seemed to grow. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through social media, watching videos, anything to keep my mind occupied. But nothing worked. Then the whispers started again. Low and unintelligible, they seemed to seep from the very walls. My stomach dropped as I turned my head toward the sound. It was coming from the corner of the room, the darkest part where the dim desk lamp's light didn't quite reach. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice shaky. The whispers stopped. Silence pressed down on me, suffocating and absolute. I reached for my phone, clutching it like a lifeline. My fingers hovered over the flashlight icon, and I hesitated. Did I really want to see? Before I could decide, the phone lit up on its own. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. The call timer was already counting. 2 seconds. 3. With trembling fingers, I pressed the green button and lifted the phone to my ear. My voice barely escaped. "Hello?" This time, the voice on the other end wasn't Daniel's. It was deep, distorted, and dripping with malice. "You can't escape tomorrow." The line went dead. After the call, the silence in the room became unbearable, as if the walls were holding their breath. My fingers hovered over the phone screen, desperate to call someone, anyone, but who would believe me? I wasn't even sure I believed myself. I stared at the clock. 9:47 p.m. Time felt like an enemy, ticking away with a mocking rhythm. I couldn't ignore the words. "You can't escape tomorrow." What did it mean? Was it a warning or a threat? The weight of the unknown pressed down on me until I felt suffocated. I threw on a hoodie and decided to leave. Maybe the cold night air would clear my head. The dorm hallway was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every footstep. I passed by a few closed doors, but not a single sound leaked through. Everyone else seemed to have disappeared into their own worlds. Outside, the chill bit into my skin. The campus was deserted, the streetlights casting long, thin shadows on the empty pathways. I walked aimlessly, hoping the movement would shake the fear clinging to me. Instead, the shadows seemed to stretch and shift, as if they were alive. I shook my head, blaming my lack of sleep. I found myself near the old library, its imposing silhouette looming against the night sky. The place was closed at this hour, but the sight of it made me feel safer somehow. Its heavy stone walls were a stark contrast to the thin walls of my dorm, which suddenly felt like they couldn't protect me from anything. A sudden vibration in my pocket startled me. I pulled out my phone to see an alert. One new message. It was from an unknown number. The text read, "You're running out of time." My breath caught. I wanted to believe it was a prank, some cruel joke, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. My hand shook as I typed a response. "Who is this? What do you want?" No reply came. The message sat there, a silent taunt, as if daring me to understand its meaning. I headed back to my dorm, my pace quickening with every step. When I reached my door, I hesitated, my hand on the doorknob. The room on the other side felt like a trap, but staying out here wasn't any better. Steeling myself, I turned the knob and stepped inside. The moment the door closed behind me, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged in the air, and an icy dread settled over me. I flicked on the light switch, but the room remained dark. The bulb in the overhead light had gone out. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. 11:59, be ready. The clock read 11:30 p.m. My panic escalated. I grabbed a flashlight from my desk drawer and scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place, but the shadows clung to the corners like they were waiting. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but my legs refused to move. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching the flashlight like a weapon, my eyes darting to the clock every few seconds. 11:45 p.m. The whispers began again, faint and insidious. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I shone the flashlight toward the darkest corner of the room, but it revealed only the bland, unremarkable wall. Still, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They weren't just sounds anymore, they were words. He's coming! You can't run! It's too late! I covered my ears, trying to block them out, but it was useless. They weren't just in the room, they were in my head. My vision blurred with tears as I rocked back and forth, whispering to myself. This isn't real. This isn't real. 11:58 p.m. The whispers stopped abruptly. The silence was deafening, a void that made the ticking of the clock thunderous. I stared at the time, willing it to stop, to freeze, to give me just a little more time. But the numbers marched forward, relentless. 11:59 p.m. The flashlight flickered. The shadows in the corner began to move, coalescing into a shape, a figure that seemed to pulse with malice. My throat tightened, and a scream lodged itself there, unable to escape. The clock struck midnight. And then everything went black. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light, it was a suffocating void that pressed against me from every direction. My body felt weightless, suspended in nothingness, yet the oppressive sensation of being watched burned into my every nerve. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed before it could leave my lips. And then, faintly, a light appeared. It wasn't the warm glow of salvation but a cold, eerie luminescence that illuminated a figure. At first, it seemed human, but as the light grew, its true form emerged. The figure was tall, impossibly so, with limbs that stretched unnaturally long and a face obscured by a shifting, inky void. Its presence radiated malice, an ancient hunger that made my skin crawl. You called me here, it hissed, the voice reverberating in a way that made my skull ache. It wasn't just speaking, it was invading my mind, pulling apart my thoughts and memories as if they were fragile threads. I didn't call you! I managed to choke out, the words tasting like ash. My flashlight lay forgotten on the floor, its dim beam casting trembling shadows. I don't even know who you are! It laughed, a guttural, bone-chilling sound that echoed through the void. Lies. Your desperation, your fear, it was enough. You invited me, and now you will face the consequence. My mind raced, grasping for something, anything, that could make sense of what was happening. The phone calls, the whispers, the messages, had I somehow summoned this thing? But how? And why? The figure moved closer, each step deliberate and excruciatingly slow. You cannot escape what you have called forth, it intoned. The hour has come. Instinct took over, and I lunged for the flashlight, gripping it tightly as if it could protect me. Without thinking, I shone the beam directly at the figure. To my surprise, it recoiled, the light disrupting its form. The shadows that composed its body writhed and scattered, reforming with a furious hiss. You think that will save you? It snarled, its voice laced with venom. You are mine! But I had seen its weakness. Fueled by a desperate hope, I stood and directed the light at it again. Stay back! I yelled, my voice cracking but resolute. The creature's form began to falter, its edges dissolving into the void. It lashed out with an elongated arm, but the light seemed to weaken it, the tendrils of shadow retreating before they could reach me. "You cannot banish me," it growled, though its form was shrinking, its power waning. "I will always be watching. Waiting. Your fear will call me again." With a final, piercing shriek, the figure collapsed into itself, the void imploding and taking it with it. The oppressive darkness lifted, replaced by the dim, familiar light of my dorm room. My phone lay on the floor, its screen cracked but still glowing faintly. I collapsed onto my bed, every muscle trembling. The clock read 12:07 a.m. Only 7 minutes had passed, but it felt like an eternity. My breath came in shallow gasps as I stared at the phone. The messages were gone, erased as if they had never existed. The call logs were empty, my inbox blank. Only the broken flashlight in my hand served as proof that any of it had happened. I didn't sleep that night. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, watching and waiting. I've kept the lights on ever since, though I know it's only a matter of time. The creature's parting words echo in my mind. "Your fear will call me again." And deep down, I know it's right.